Good afternoon, viewers. We are live again from Sakra World Hospital, and today I have one of the very distinguished doctors with me, Dr. Ravi Kiran. He is a senior consultant pediatrics and neonatology in the Center of Excellence Pediatrics and Pediatric Super Specialty at Sakra World Hospital. Welcome to this session, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Kaushik.
Well, today is worldwide observed as World Autism Awareness Day, and today he's going to talk about the symptoms, causes, treatments related to this topic. Welcome, sir.
Yeah, hi. I feel privileged to talk about autism on World Autism Day. What is autism and what is the general perception of autism and what exactly is the social responsibility towards autism and what is the guidance a parent requires when they are having a child who's suspected or diagnosed with autism. These are the important points which we should just touch upon, but each of these is a potentially explorable topic. So generally speaking, yeah, why is today celebrated as World Autism Day? Because April 2nd in 2008 was the first time when the World Autism Day was started to create a general awareness to the public along with empathy and kindness towards autism. The idea came from the point that many parents are suffering with label diagnosis, don't know how to handle, and the public being not empathetic towards the requirements of an autistic person or a child. Okay, so generally, so with this intention, World Autism Day was taken up by United Nations from 2008. From then on, every year April 2nd is celebrated as World Autism Day with the same idea of making world friendly for autistic child or autistic person. So it's about increasing our inclusion of autistic people within the normal frame. Again, uh, it's not about labeling, so it's about general change of the perception of the public towards what is diagnosed as autistic.
Right.
So in that sense, what is autism? If I ask the question like, say, is it any child with any abnormality? Is it a learning disability? Is it a mental disorder? Is it something which is curable? These are the common doubts which is lingering in all of us. And so to that extent, autism can be taken as, if you strictly categorize, it's categorized as a neurological developmental disorder, wherein there is some amount of mismatch between the child's or the person's age with there's a component of repetitive behavior and there's a component of social disconnect. So if you draw a Venn diagram of two things, so on one side we have social disconnect, on the other side we have repetitive behavior. So social disconnect can be verbal or non-verbal, meaning they may not be able to express themselves either through their speech or through their expressivity
Actions.
or through expressivity, actions, body language, or other modes of communication. So when there's a lack of this connect between the other persons, that's one of the building blocks to say this, one of the main points to pinpoint on the diagnosis of autism. Coupled with that, there's a repetitive behavior. That is where the word autism comes from. Automatisms or automation of behaviors.
Okay.
So there's a stereotyped behavioral response for many things in autism. So these are the basic points to say we are dealing with autism, or or a child or a person has some autistic features. And here, are they abnormal? Not necessarily, or many times they are not abnormal, but sometimes they could be suffering. One thing is for sure, they have a difficulty in communicating what is in their mind to the next person. You can consider that as a khazana which has a door which is locked. Their mind
Right.
has all the varied experiences what you and I have. Their mind have all the emotions and feelings what you and I have. They empathize, they feel the emotional connect and pain, they feel the physical connect and pain, but at the same time they're not in a position to tell that, and you are not in a position to extract that from them. So they are kind of locked khazana, which we need to know how to unlock them, how to handle them, or rather how we handle ourselves in front of them, make the
Right.
world a better place for them to live and sustain their other interests. And many times it's not a diagnosis, it's not a disease, it's not a stigma. It's more about we have to consider autism as a mild variation in normalcy to a great extent. So you can call this as, if we consider ourselves as normal, there's no testimony to say that. So,
Right.
but still, if we consider ourselves to be normal, then generally those who the society considers as normal are called as neurotypical.
Right.
Those who are not neurotypical, they fit into mild
Autism
autism kind of a picture category.
Right.
And this is a wide range in terms of mild to severe, and in terms of the associated features they have, like they may be suffering from only disconnect, they may be suffering from only automatisms, they may be suffering from some particular modality of sensory stimulus. For example, they may not be able to handle some particular modality of stimulus. So the range of autism is like a spectrum, not only in one dimension, in multiple dimensions, in what they are going through, in what intensity they are going through, what is the level of their ability to come out to get over that by their other activities, and
Right.
what is the skills they need to learn. And here the point of World Autism Day awareness program is important, because it's the change. The society has to become more receptive for them than trying to change each and every autistic person to suit our needs. Yeah, first of all, we should take away the stigma and the tension associated with the name. It's not about labeling a child, it's about getting to see how best we can adapt the child to the environment to the child.
Right. So the severity and the grade differs from one
Yes,
individual to
you can on
another.
a functional scale, you can classify them as class 1, class 2 and class 3, depending on the support required to help the
To
child.
sustain that child.
Correct.
Right.
So here, yeah, we'll just discuss very informally about what are the common alerting points, and some common questions which is there. Like, say, one of the important questions which we have is, how do you pick up an autistic child?
Right.
Okay. So generally what happens when you go to a pediatrician, or even when you don't go to a pediatrician, even in rural areas, now this word autism and the diagnosis of autism has increased tremendously since 1990. That is generally because of the awareness of the thing, and also because of the sensitivity of the medical field towards picking up things with the intention to help the child, not with the intention to show the numbers, not with the intention to stigmatize the child, but what best we can do to fit the child into the society. That is the basic idea. So the screening techniques are more. Was this autism not there 100 years back? Definitely it was
It
there.
was there.
Okay. So if you see in your class, there was some boy who was a fantastic person in mathematical skills. He would blurt out all the answers, but to see to himself, he is always to himself. He would not bother to discuss with others. Maybe he was slightly autistic. We never know. Okay.
Sure.
So many adults, after reading through and understanding autism, have self-diagnosed autism. So meaning to say, it's not abnormal. It may be that I may have mild autistic features. After many of the autistic discussions, many of us will start introspecting whether I'm autistic, whether am I right in handling and behaving like that with a particular person. So we have to be sensitive, and we have to understand, we have to adapt, we have to help them rather than
Show
make
more
them adapt.
compassion towards them.
Exactly.
Right.
So in the same line, so whether we can pick up early is one of the questions. So as soon as a parent observes that the child is not reactive to them, child is not responding to them the way a normal intuition of a mother very many times, even if she is uneducated, she knows what she has to perceive from a child by intuition, or by
Body language could be.
by what to say, not by learning, but by intuition or by biological phenomena itself. She'll understand whether the baby is reacting well to her to the needs, whether the baby is demanding feeds or not, whether the baby is happily smiling with her or not. Generally, a kid who is autistic would not have had the parents of an autistic kid many times don't remember having had a very hearty laugh with the baby. So one of the earliest signs could be, you normally see a peekaboo game.
Right.
Peekaboo, or in
yeah.
different languages it's called in different names. In Hindi you call it
Luka Chupi.
Aank mein choli, or
Luka
Chupi, or in Telugu Dobuchi. So many different languages have different names. But then what ultimately it means is, baby is surprised by the sudden appearance of parent's face and laughs loudly. So in this peekaboo game, an autistic kid's parents have noticed that the child doesn't enjoy so much, or doesn't laugh back
Respond
as
the
it
way,
expected, or as does the neighborhood child does. So this is one of the earliest sign. And still earlier, if you say at around 6-7 months, baby starts laughing heartily with the parents. So if somebody comes at 6 months, one of the questions we ask to screen that is whether the baby has a good hearty laugh with you. So generally, don't no need to get panicky if any of these things are there. But then when on assessment we find some red flags that requires more deeper understanding or probing to sensitize the family and to make sure that this child is in the spectrum or not in the spectrum, and at the same time the healthcare personnel has to be very sensitive towards the parental emotions, because you just come for a healthcare visit and I say that the child has some autistic features. It's kind of a
disheartening news, right?
I wouldn't say disheartening news. At least it's something new. You have to just prime them and then tell what it means. It's not about stigmatizing. So that's how the first pickup happens.
Right.
So once the pickup happens, then the next questions will be: is it curable? Is it a disease of the nervous system? So autism is not one disease; it's a spectrum, as we were discussing. When we have a spectrum which talks about communication, which talks about repetitive behavior, which are two neurologically distinct functions, which has different sensory modalities involved. I may be somebody might be able to process visual information well. Somebody might be overwhelmed by some simple stimulus. So some may be oversensitive to auditory stimulus, like say they cannot hear sounds. Like for example, you are speaking, you are also speaking simultaneously. At an extent, can block one of your thoughts and receive one of your thoughts. There, the handling of the sensory information is not correct in an autistic child. Mean to say, what is exactly wrong? Nobody has pinpointed. There are different areas of neurological involvement in different cases. That means to say, autism is not a disease wherein you can fit everybody into one
single category,
one pathological phenomena, but it can be wide different areas of neurological abnormality, which has a common thing that there's an inability or a disability to handle the sensory information like it should be. I give 2 or 3 sensory stimuli simultaneously. A kid with autism may not be able to handle. They just want to shut one information. So often you see a kid when hearing loud noises, if they are closing their ears or if they don't want to stimulate, they just cocoon themselves. So these could be some red flags.
Early symptoms.
Red flags, I would say. And simultaneously, and similarly, one more thing is about their sensitivity to the pain. Sometimes you see a kid has multiple bumps here and there. Parents feel okay, he's rough and tough, he's just going around, but then he's not sensitive to his pain. So probably he's not able to handle his tactile stimulus correctly. So he's not able to focus on his tactile stimulus. So these are some alerting points. So so basically again we are trying to tell that it's not one particular disease, it's a wide range of neurological changes which could manifest as inability to handle sensory stimuli. When I say sensory stimuli, any of the 5 senses what we know: vision, auditory, tactile, and all. So these points will alert when the kid is not able to handle the sensory stimuli. So now the next question was whether the child outgrows this or not. So the neurological phenomena which has caused this problem is actually permanent. Means to say, you cannot change anything for the neurological phenomena what's going on. Okay, but you can make a better fit of the environment to the child. You can make the child to anticipate the stimuli. For example, I know that I'm going to talk about autism. I'm prepared about how I talk, but you just come and ask me about some other thing suddenly, and 2 other people ask like impromptu different questions. I'm not prepared. So we are all in a way mildly into the same thing,
into the same category.
Yeah,
right.
But then it's a different level. This preparation for you and me might be a short notice of a few hours to a day maybe, but for a child with autism, this priming their environment to everyday things should be so structured and so routine that they are not surprised by any of the things that comes to them. So in other words, keep the surprises in the activities to minimum. For example, you see that a child has to learn an apple is red, okay, or this is the shape of an apple, okay. So, or you want to make them read a particular book. The same stimulus, the same way, multimodal stimulation, pointing to the same thing. You show an apple in the diagram, and you tell it's an apple, and you tell it's sweet and tasty. So you try to explain to them and then teach. That way they will grasp it better, and they are ready to absorb the information better. So there is so in essence, I was about to make a point that it's not that they outgrow the disease. The neurological phenomena is there. You cannot change it. Nobody can do anything at that, because neurological neurons don't have so much of a regrowing capability, or neurological phenomena is the same, but environmental fit of the child is something in your hand and in our hands. That is what is all about the World Autism Day to make the public or the general world
Community.
more friendly for autism, for autistic kids. So if you see the catch statements of each year's World Autism Day, it's all about including them. So one awareness stamp, or how you include them in the general mainstream of education. One school of thought says that give them a special education, but it's not about isolating them. It's about inclusive criteria for them. So we were talking a few minutes back about neurotypical and neuroatypical. They are
Right.
neuroatypical. So if you are neurotypical and if I am neurotypical and if somebody is neuroatypical, they might just be a mild diversity. So the present concept says that they are just diverse neurologically than you and me. They are not totally diseased or something basically wrong. They are a part of neurodiversity, which to which nature is a home for you and me. So is it for them. So
Right.
in that nature, in that neurodiversity, we have to talk about including them in the mainstream. So include the autistic people in the mainstream, include the autistic women in the mainstream, and this year's theme is include them in terms of their occupation into the mainstream. Give them a work environment which is good enough in the post-COVID era, so that they are a part of a productive society, not just existential society. They are a part of productive society, contributing to the economic improvement of the post-COVID era. So
Right.
they are expected to have a very good role in terms of employment. So this is the thing. Hopefully, all the countries take it up in the right sense and they get equal opportunities. There's no discrimination in terms of their employments, provided they have the necessary skills, and
Right.
they can have a lot of skills. They can have some areas better than you and me. Some of them can become savants in the field. For example, they can I know a few of them who are excellent in their own fields. So that way, they can be made fit to the environment in a very productive way.
Sure. Well, that's a wonderful explanation toward the autism and the importance of the day. Why is it observed worldwide? Well, I have some questions for you here,
Sure.
and I'm going to take one by one. So, my first question to you is, how does the children get that? Is it passed from the parent? Do they inherit it during their birth, or how does it happen?
Okay. So in our discussion, we were telling that it is a very diverse phenomenon.
Right.
It has many neurological issues, and it has a few common appearances. All these different neurological diversity or the neurologic pathological diversity will all channel into common appearances. The common appearance is difficulty in handling sensory stimuli, difficulty in communicating to the next person, or the social difficulty, and repetitive behaviors. So anything
Right.
that has these features will fit into autism diagnosis. So because there is such a diverse cause for these things, the etiology or the basic reason for all this is also as diverse as. So it's multifactorial.
Okay.
Some of the implicated factors are, you can talk in terms of genetics. There's some amount of genetic influence, not that it's the main role. Genetics has a small role.
But it does have a role.
It does have a
It
role.
does have
It
a
does have a role. But I cannot say that if somebody is autistic at home, the next child will be autistic or not. No, I cannot say that. But then there's a genetic component to it. However little it might be, there's a genetic component to it. Secondly, there is if you want to talk about what we understand, then antenatally, a mother who's exposed to too much of alcohol or too much of psychotropic medications can have a slight implication in the kids having a tendency towards autism. Okay. And the other points similarly, like say environmental toxin exposure during pregnancy could be leading to, okay, and birth trauma or any insult during the birth could be slightly deviating towards that. And
Okay.
other factors also, if you have to consider, there are some specific diagnoses, like say what people know. So there are different spectrums in autism.
Okay.
So some of them fit into some cause, but then not all the times you can know the cause, nor is it important to know the cause. It's
Okay.
important first, as humans, we need to make sure that we are inclusive towards them. We give them a proper fit in the society. We ourselves adjust to a great extent to make our environment friendly for them. And diagnosis, yes, it's a scientific part of it. It's important, but it's not necessary to have a perfect diagnosis all the time. And one of the so these are some important things there.
Since we were talking about that, just a question: is there any particular prenatal scans which can actually identify or probably indicate that the upcoming child or the child which is not born yet could be an autistic child? Is there any scans?
At this stage, there's no concrete evidence of that, but cannot say no in future. Why? Because they are looking at earlier the thought was that autism can be picked up at around 2.5 to 3 years, but now based on some keen observations, we are looking at the behavior of small babies, like in the range of 6 months to 9 months also.
So at the age of 6 months, one can actually identify that. Oh,
Not
okay.
all the time, not all,
Not
the time,
all
but
the
there
time.
can be subtle cues which we can pick up.
Okay.
And again, here timing of an autism is difficult because some autisms will start early. Some of them will be totally normal for the first 2 years of life, and then they go for degenerative
Okay.
phenomena. Some of them will manifest at different age groups with different phenomena. So it's difficult to fix a time frame. But if you talk about how early you can diagnose, there are instances wherein the parents have seen some difference in the child's behavior as early as 1 month also.
Okay.
So a very good neuropsychologist or a child psychologist could be in a position to identify when the first 1 to 2 months if it is true, but then it's not practically feasible to get all the child psychology evaluation done at 1.5 2 months. So when you see a red flag, yeah, then you look into it. In the same way, going backwards, someday somebody might pick up some ultrasound evidence of this particular kind of a fetal behavior. We don't know. That's more of a scientific fiction as of now, but I cannot say no.
Cannot say. Now, this condition, does it worsen with time? I mean, with age?
Okay, so we were talking about the phenomena itself is not reversible. Neurodegenerative phenomena, what has happened is not reversible, but at the same time, there is something called as early intervention. Okay, you catch the kid early, you make an early diagnosis and start fitting the environment well to the baby right from the very young age. A lot of time goes before the parents start accepting the phenomena as a reversible thing. They are in their own turmoil. Once the diagnosis is made, they go through a lot of different modes of understanding as to what it is, and before accepting that, what they have to do is something which is to suit the environment and what exactly is to be done. So it takes a lot of time. So early intervention is vital. So they don't outgrow, but the fit can make their life very easy, and that helps to get their other skills out.
Right.
For example, there's a child who can perform anything, but then he's not able to handle his auditory stimuli. So there are gadgets like, say, noise cancellations. You must have heard of white noise for sleep nowadays.
Yes.
Okay, this is the same principle wherein the background noise is cut off, which will calm your mind a little. So as we were telling, it's about neurodiversity. We are somewhere a little towards that thing. We cannot say no. So here, early intervention, early diagnosis, and early intervention is very important. Here, the sensitivity of the medical community and pediatric community is slowly rising. So pediatricians are very aware nowadays. Like, say, though we are not too much into research level understanding of autism, yeah, we are geared up to pick up early and refer them to the right people. So that early intervention starts, and parents have to be told that it's not about labeling, it's about making the child better suited. And there are people who are specialized in that: occupational therapy, physiotherapy, and sensory stimulation handling separately. These are all separate expertise nowadays available, which can help the parents to tailor make the therapy for that particular child.
Right. Thank you for this session. But before we say goodbye to you all, I have one last question for you. That what are different approaches for treatment, or what's the future for these kind of children's?
Okay, so yeah, that's a very good question. But then we have to here our goal is to, as we were telling, suit the child. So the main thing is towards occupational therapy, physiotherapy, and altering the sensory modality, the sensory inputs what they get. Some of the things what has been tried is for hearing stimulus. As I was telling you, there are some ear muffs which are helpful in reducing the unnecessary stimuli. Okay. And as far as the tactile stimulus is concerned, some of them, stimulus doesn't mean that I stimulate all the time. Some of them are overstimulated, some of them are understimulated. Okay, so there are techniques for tactile stimulation also. Some of them might need some simple techniques, like, say, before you start the day, you do 20 jumping jacks. Okay, before you start the day, there is a therapy ball. Child rolls in and out for about 10 moments, like that. 2 cycles, 3 cycles. So basically, we stimulate the child to the right level. Which is the right level? That is individualistic. Some child might need more stimulation, some child might need less stimulation, and some child may be overwhelmed by a simple stimulus. For them, cutting down the unnecessary stimuli is very important. So that way speaking, they themselves biologically know that they cannot handle it, then they cocoon themselves. So don't disturb a child who is cocooning himself. He's trying to settle himself down at that moment. So therapy is mainly geared towards occupational therapy, speech therapy. Of course, we have spoken less about speech because many people, I chose to speak less about speech mainly because many of them know that speech reduction is a part of autism. Nearly 40% of the kids with autism never speak. 30% of them speak, but then later on regress. So speech therapy is a very important component of this. Speech therapy, behavioral therapy. There's something called applied behavioral therapy, and occupational therapy. Play therapy is very important, wherein you allow the child to explore his interests. Some of the important, some simple things could be you allow the child to play with newspapers. Okay. So that rustle itself is a stimulus for them. Okay. And you allow the child to play with kitchen utensils. Some of them make some noise to stimulate themselves. Some of them need themselves they know how to stimulate themselves. So therapy is very individualistic, but main approach is towards occupational therapy, speech therapy, play therapy, and making them learn some life skills, some skills which can be sustained for their daily life.
Right. Well, thank you for that insightful session, Doctor. And well, I guess we've been able to answer most of your questions here. And personally, I have learned a lot about autism and this entire condition. I'm sure that's the case with you all here. And thank you so much for joining us. Till we meet next time, thank you again.
Thank you.